On Monday, October 23, 2005, Anita Grinstead Gaddis received an unexpected phone call. The person on the other end was a family friend, uttering the sentence, "They can't find Tara." These 4 small words would drastically change the course of Anita's life, as well as all of her sister Tara Grinstead's family and friends. When Tara seemingly vanished from her home into thin air, her disappearance would become one of the biggest cases ever taken on by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. After the case seemingly became cold, over a decade later, a true crime podcast reinvigorated the public's interest, finally leading to answers about what took place that night Tara went missing. Even with these answers, many people think that the system failed Tara in more ways than one, including in getting her the real justice she deserved. In this video, we'll be going over everything you need to know to form your own opinion. But to do that, we need to go behind the headlines. In the media and online, Tara Grinstead has been referred to as the missing beauty queen, but in actuality, she was much more than that. Born on November 14, 1974 to parents Bill and Faye, Tara grew up alongside her older sister Anita in Hawkinsville, Georgia. At a young age, Tara's parents would go on to get a divorce, but she ended up growing close with her dad's second wife, Connie. Tara was also extremely close to her lifelong best friend, Maria Woods. Tara and Maria did everything together, including cheerleading in high school, and everyone knew Tara to be one of the most positive and bubbly people to be around. Maria has described Tara as radiant inside and out, and said that she made every situation more fun. Tara always had aspirations to go to college, but she knew that without scholarships or other financial support, her parents wouldn't be able to afford it. To earn money to save for school, Tara began participating in local and state beauty pageants, and even won the title of Miss Tifton. This earned her a spot to be able to compete in the Miss Georgia pageant, which was always one of Tara's dreams. Even though she didn't win Miss Georgia, getting to participate was a big deal. It was never about the crown for her, and even though pageantry helped to boost Tara's confidence and build her self-esteem, they were just a means to an end to further her education. She was ultimately able to save up enough to pay for part of her tuition after graduating from high school. During her first few years of college, Tara began working her first job in the nursery at her family's church. This is where she learned that she had a passion for helping children and decided that she wanted to major in education to become a teacher. Tara went on to graduate from Middle Georgia College and then transferred to Valdosta State College, where she earned her master's degree in history. From there, she got her first job teaching at Irwin County High School in 1998. She continued working toward another graduate degree to fulfill her ultimate goal of one day becoming a high school principal. This may seem like big aspirations for someone only in their first few years of teaching, but Tara was said to have an amazing way of bringing students and the faculty of the school together. She made great friends with many of her colleagues and turned what can be a really stressful job and atmosphere into a positive and uplifting environment. She wasn't only invested in her students' education, but passionate about helping them and their lives to become better people. She was the cheerleading coach for 9th and 10th grade students, and after she hung up her crown, she mentored girls and helped them prepare for pageants as well.
I'm an 11th grade history teacher at Irwin County High School, and I also have a cheerleading squad of junior varsity cheerleaders, 9th and 10th graders. I just completed my first year teaching, and I loved every bit of it.
Now, what did your students say when you went in on that Monday or whatever day it was you went back to work and you told them that you had won Miss Tifton? What were some of the statements?
Actually, I didn't have to tell them because it had already gotten around the school before I'd gotten there Monday. But when I walked into my classroom, the very first class that I had, they wanted to start the class off by talking about, tell us what you're going to do when you go to Miss Georgia. And I said, we've got to do our lesson first. And so I gave my notes hoping that they would forget by the end of class, but the last 10 minutes of class they said, you said we could talk about it if we got through with our work. So they were asking a lot of questions.
By October 2005, from the outside looking in, Tara was living a happy and successful life that students looking up to her envied.
The guys in our school like Miss Tara. She is beautiful. She is somebody everybody wants to be like, so that might have something to do with it.
If someone had come there and said one of your students is in trouble or one of your teachers needs your help, she would have gone.
Just a month from her 30th birthday, Tara was that beloved young, vibrant teacher. She was renting out a nice little house from a family friend, was only 6 weeks away from earning her next degree, which would increase her salary by $10,000, and just seemed to have it all. However, the only thing that appeared to be lacking in her life was a significant other, and Tara was having a little bit of a tough time in that apartment. For around 6 years, Tara dated a man named Marcus Harper off and on. who was a former police officer in Osceola, and then went on to join the Army Rangers. During he and Tara's relationship, he did tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and she hoped that when he returned, they would eventually get married. However, when he got back, it became clear that Marcus wasn't ready to settle down, and they ultimately ended their relationship. Tara had been in love with Marcus and was said to be devastated when their relationship ended. Marcus even said that on one occasion, she showed up to where he was staying and began banging on his windows, saying that if he started dating someone else, that she'd take her own life. But there's no actual evidence that this happened other than his word. She did send the occasional unsavory email to him, but at the end of the day, she was heartbroken, and 6 years isn't exactly easy to get over. Regardless, Tara ended up trying to move on and went on a few dates with some other men here and there. That October, she was just working toward getting back her confidence and into the swing of things, being single. On Saturday, October 22nd, 2005, Tara spent the day helping girls from school get ready for an event called the Annual Sweet Potato Festival in Irwin County. Along with the parade and sweet potato dish contests, there was also the Miss Sweet Potato pageant. Tara was helping to primp the girls, doing their hair and makeup, and would even be a judge for the competition later that evening. The pageant was held at the local Fitzgerald Grand Theater and ended around 6 p.m. From there, Tara stopped by a family friend's home named Rhett Roberts. Rhett's father was actually the one renting out the home where Tara was living, and she and Rhett were also teachers together at Irwin County High. They had gone on a few dates together in the past, but nothing really progressed further. He would later say that Tara came by to talk about what is ultimately unclear, but she left from there to attend a barbecue with some friends. Tara stayed and socialized until around 11:15 p.m. before a friend walked her to her car so that she could drive the short distance home. The next day, Tara was supposed to go to church with her dad and stepmom and then go out to lunch, but she didn't show up at either one. Her mom, Faye, who lived further away, also wasn't able to get in contact with her, and everyone was getting a little worried because Tara usually always answered her phone. Even in 2005, Tara had a cell phone, and she didn't just not show up to places she said she would be with no warning. Faye called to ask a family friend named Heath Dykes, who was a police officer in nearby Perry, to go over at around midnight to check on Tara. When he got there, he knocked on the door, but got no answer. He noticed that Tara's beloved German Shepherd was in the fence in the backyard, so he figured she was asleep. Tara's car was still in the carport, and it didn't seem like her to leave the dog outside if she had gone somewhere. Heath just decided to stick his business card in the door so that she'd know he had been by. He tried to call her several more times throughout the day, but all of the calls went to voicemail. At that point, even though her close friends and family were becoming a little worried, no one was frantic yet. Tara was a young single woman who could have very well been out with someone she was dating or doing something else. However, things changed the next day when Tara didn't show up for work on Monday morning. Missing church and skipping lunch, maybe, but Tara would never no call, no show at work. Teachers especially always have to let someone know if they're going to be out, and they have to get sub plans together and things like that. Even if Tara were sick, she would have made sure that there was coverage for her class and that the students would be taken care of. Her co-workers became even more concerned when she still wasn't answering her phone and decided to call the local police department to conduct a wellness check. Around the same time the police arrived, two of Tara's good friends and co-workers showed up to her house. The police let the women in to tell them if anything seemed out of the ordinary. In her home, they found evidence of her helping girls to get ready for the pageant on Saturday. Her bed was unmade, and strangely, Tara's cell phone was still plugged in on the bedside table, but her home phone was on the floor. It also appeared that her bedside lamp was broken, and like someone attempted to put it back together, causing it to be leaning askew on the table. Her purse and keys also seemed to be missing, which was weird because her car was still in the carport. The car was unlocked, and although it was clean inside, there appeared to be dried mud on the tires. The police noticed that the seat was pushed way further back than for someone as petite as Tara, and there was also an envelope with $100 inside located in the dashboard. Being a teacher on a budget, Tara would never have left her car unlocked with cash inside, just sitting there for someone to take. This and the strange findings inside the home caused the police to think that something bad could have taken place. A neighbor reported that they had gotten home at around 1:30 a.m. on Sunday morning and noticed that Tara's carport was empty, but her car was back a few hours later. Two different witnesses said they saw a black truck parked in front of her house, and then one mentioned seeing someone they thought to be a man sitting inside. These sightings happened on Sunday between 6 a.m. and 7:30 p.m., and again at midnight on Monday morning. Investigators also found on Tara's caller ID that she had received a call from a payphone, but were unable to determine who the call was from because they hadn't left a message. They also located a tan rubber disposable glove in Tara's front yard, which would later prove to be a crucial piece of evidence. Immediately, all of Tara's friends and family arrived to begin trying to figure out where she could have gone, and it was determined that she hadn't spoken to anyone they knew of since she left the barbecue on Saturday. Police then asked her loved ones about any potential male interest in her life or anyone who may have wanted to hurt Tara, and they were given several names. Obviously, given that Tara and Marcus had recently gone through a messy breakup, he was the first person that the investigators wanted to question. However, he was quickly ruled out as a suspect because he had been doing a ride-along with a friend who was a police officer Saturday night and early into the morning on Sunday. He was just at home the rest of Sunday and into Monday with his family, so there was no way he could have been involved. Investigators were also made aware of another potential person of interest, a young man named Anthony Vickers. Anthony was a former student of Tara who claimed to have started a romantic relationship with her after he graduated. He said that since they began seeing each other so soon after high school, Tara wanted to keep it on the down low because for a teacher, that wouldn't be a really good look. It's not 100% known whether or not Tara and Anthony actually did have a relationship, or if Anthony had just become obsessed with her. That sort of thing had actually happened with other male students in the past, with some borderline stalking and following her home. However, their alleged relationship ended. Anthony apparently became jealous of her seeing someone else and came to her home being what Tara described in a police report as abnormal and aggressive. She said, "I was very scared for my well-being, as well as scared about Anthony. Anthony invaded my privacy and my home while doing so in a raging and out-of-control manner." She ended up calling the police and Anthony was arrested and issued a restraining order to stay away from Tara. Regardless, the police ultimately concluded that Anthony had an alibi during the time frame of when Tara disappeared, and he also submitted to a lie detector test and passed. Another man who Tara allegedly had a romantic relationship with was the family friend and police officer Heath Dykes, who came to Tara's home to check on her. Actually, Heath had been in the home with Tara when Anthony showed up to the house, possibly prompting his jealousy. It's also important to note that Heath Dykes was a married man during this time, and it's again not known whether or not they had a romantic relationship or were just friends. And I will say that in many cases like this, when a young woman goes missing, it's common for people to try to smear her reputation and paint her as some sort of sleep around, when that's not even the case. I mentioned before that Tara and Marcus had an on and off again relationship and had gone through a breakup, so if she were seeing people in between or after, that doesn't somehow make her more liable in whatever did or didn't happen to her. Regardless, Heath had an alibi as well, so the police were really at a dead end with the obvious men in her life. From there, being a small department, the Acela police decided to ask the GBI to get involved in the investigation because they knew they were going to need some help determining what happened to Tara. The community and all local law enforcement agencies worked together to scour the area of pine forests, farmland, pecan orchards, ponds, swamps, and lakes. But for months, they came up empty-handed. With no answers, rumors started circulating around the town of Tara potentially being so distraught over her and Marcus's breakup that she decided to either end her own life or leave and start over. Other rumors were spread about Tara possibly having relationships with students, which again were unfounded and belittling to who she was as a teacher and a person. There were talks at parties with drunk guys joking about knowing what happened to her, but none of the stories ever panned out with law enforcement. It was literally as though Tara vanished into thin air, and even though there were tips and leads, they never led anywhere. In fact, there were so many tips that it actually became a detriment to the investigation. Due to the sheer volume, the GBI and police department didn't know which ones to take seriously and which ones to follow up on. After a few years of the case seemingly going cold, the GBI decided to release information regarding the glove that was found in Tara's lawn. They said that when it was discovered, they sent it off for lab testing, which determined that the glove had both Tara's DNA as well as an unknown male. They tried to match the DNA with possible suspects, known criminals in town, and even in national databases, but there was still no match. In the media, the glove was actually being referred to as blue latex, which was a tactic that would prove potentially beneficial later on. During this time, Tara's family and friends were obviously distraught, not knowing if she was dead, alive, being abused, or worse, and the not knowing took a significant mental toll. Just a few months after her disappearance, Tara's step-grandmother, who she had been very close to, suffered from a stroke and passed away. The nursing home where she lived stated that they had no doubt that the stress of Tara being gone led to her stroke. For months, Tara's mother, Faye, refused to leave her house for any reason because she wanted to make sure she was there just in case Tara tried to call. In 2008, Faye would pass away after a long battle with cancer. never knowing what happened to her daughter. 5 years after Tara's disappearance in 2010, Tara was ruled dead, which is determined by a judge after a person has been missing for more than 5 years. It would be another 6 years and nearly 11 since Tara had gone missing that there would finally be a resurgence in the case. A man named Payne Lindsay, who lived in Atlanta, had family ties to Irwin County and became interested when he heard about Tara's case. He decided to start a podcast called Up and Vanished to go over all the information and hopefully to uncover more since it had been at a standstill for so long. Payne began doing interviews with people who knew Tara, and it quickly spread like wildfire that a city slicker was conducting his own investigation. Soon, not only were the people in Osceola and Irwin County becoming interested in the podcast, but hundreds of thousands of people across the country were tuning into the mystery. Message boards were started to discuss the information presented in the episodes, and many people from around town would talk about old rumors, possible leads, and suspects. One particular person who kept a close eye on these message boards was a man by the name of Bo Dukes, who had actually been a student at Irwin County High School when Tara was a teacher. With more interest circulating again, Bo started becoming really anxious because he actually knew a lot more about the case than anyone could have expected. Bo Dukes comes from a prominent family in the Osceola area, with his grandfather being a senator and the family owning a large and successful pecan orchard. In high school, Bo was said to be really outgoing and popular. He was elected class president, threw lots of parties, and was a rich kid everyone wanted to be friends with. Bo's best friend was a guy named Ryan Duke, and even though they have similar last names, there's no blood relation. Honestly, they couldn't have come from more different backgrounds, with Ryan Duke being the really quiet, introverted kid from a low-income family. He was basically like Bo's shy sidekick, but somehow they worked. After graduating from high school in 2002, Ryan Duke went on to join the Army, but was then discharged during basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia after going AWOL. He then began using a lot of drugs and alcohol stemming from depression and feeling like a failure. Bo Dukes did a lot of nothing after high school, continuing to party and live off his family's money, which continued with Ryan when he came home from basic. Due to his choices, Bo ended up moving in with Ryan and his dad in the nearby town of Fitzgerald, so that he could be more free to party and do whatever he wanted. We'll talk about what may have occurred during some of these parties later. But in 2006, Ryan ended up moving to live with his mom in Abbeville, and he and Bo drifted apart. After this, Bo moved to Atlanta before joining the Army later that year. At basic training in Fort Still, Oklahoma, Bo became friends with a man named John McCullough. On their Christmas break, John even joined Bo in Georgia to visit his family. During his time in the Army, Bo ended up marrying a woman named Emily before being stationed in Korea and working as a unit supply specialist. He was then transferred back to Georgia to Fort Stewart and joined an infantry battalion and was sent to fight in Iraq and then Afghanistan. While fighting in the war, back home Emily was apparently spending a lot of money and had basically gone through all of Bo's savings. This prompted him and Emily to devise a scheme where Bo would use his status as a unit supply specialist to purchase things like TVs, cameras, power tools, and copper wires and fraudulently bill the items to the Army. He would then have the items shipped to Emily back where she was living in Savannah so that she could pawn the items for cash. The items totaled to around $150,000, and he and Emily were arrested and pled guilty to conspiracy. Bo was sentenced to 24 to 27 months in prison with 3 years of supervised release and ordered to pay $134,000 in restitution. Emily was sentenced to 6 months, and she and Bo ultimately divorced. In May of 2015, Bo was released from prison and sent to a halfway house in Savannah. Later that summer, when he was able to leave, he moved to Rochelle, where he decided to download Tinder to begin dating again. He met a woman named Brooke Sheridan, and the two quickly moved in together. It was during this time that the Up and Vanish podcast started taking off, and also when Bo's old Army buddy, John McCullough, got into some trouble with the law. It's not exactly clear what he did, but he leveraged information he knew about Bo to get off of his charges. John told police that while visiting Bo's family for Christmas back in 2006, he noticed a billboard in town with a picture of Tara Grinstead. John said something to the effect of, "Oh, that's a shame. She's really pretty." To which Bo replied, "You're my battle buddy, right? It takes 2,000 degrees to burn a body, and I burned Tara's body." He explained that someone else killed Tara, and he only helped to get rid of her. John had actually tried to report this to the police back when it occurred, but apparently with the hundreds of tips coming in, it was overlooked. The GBI brought Bo in for questioning, where he staunchly denied having anything to do with her murder. He even agreed to do a buccal swab for DNA, but without any other evidence, they had to let him go. However, now Bo was on their radar, and in actuality, they wouldn't have to work too much harder to move the case forward. The initial interview alone really rattled Bo, and his girlfriend Brooke started to notice a drastic change in his behavior. He started having panic attacks and heavily drinking, and one day while drunk, he decided to confide in Brooke about what happened to Tara back in 2005. He explained that his roommate at the time took his black truck, went to Tara's home, and strangled her. He said that afterwards, he took her body to Bo's family's pecan orchard and then forced Bo to help him get rid of the body. Apparently, since the body was on his family's land, the roommate said that if Bo didn't help, he'd go down for the whole thing. So according to Bo, he helped his roommate burn her body and kept the secret for over a decade. He even drove Brooke by Tara's house and out to the pecan orchard where the burning took place. Needless to say, Brooke was afraid and distanced herself from Bo. Over the next couple of weeks, she talked to her mom, who encouraged her to report the information to the GBI, which is ultimately what she decided to do. Unfortunately, Bo never told Brooke who this roommate murderer was, so that part was still unclear. After Bo spilled everything to Brooke, it was like he went down a mental downward spiral, probably knowing his days were numbered. On January 18th, 2017, Bo went to a party at a friend's house in Warner Robins. After the party, several people slept over, which is when Bo drunkenly attacked a woman at knife point and sexually assaulted her. The woman went to the hospital the next day, but didn't name Bo as her attacker at the time. In February, the GBI tried to convince Brooke to wear a wire to record a confession from Bo, but she said she was too scared and decided to just try to talk him into it herself. She went to his house to pick up more of her things she had left after the breakup, and ultimately told Bo that she went to the GBI and that he needed to go tell them everything that happened. Bo would agree to go, but whether or not he'd actually tell them the truth would remain to be seen. On February 21st, 2017, Bo and his attorney sat down with the GBI, where he issued a confession, or at least his version of events of what took place in 2005. Bo said that after partying with his best friend and roommate, Ryan Duke, he passed out and was woken up by Ryan telling him that he had broken into Tara's house and strangled her in her bed. He explained that Ryan moved her body to the orchard, and for several days they had to continuously get more wood to burn her body until there was nothing left.
Told me that he had killed Tara Grinstead. I thought he was. I didn't believe him. I thought it was mine. I told him, take me home, let me go to sleep. And he asked me to help him get rid of her body. And I agreed to help him.
So you said it took several days?
2 days.
2 days? So by Friday, there's nothing left?
No.
But you can, nothing like, there's probably some little smaller bones or stuff like that y'all just kind of left there?
It looked like it was all ash.
The GBI then contacted Ryan Dukes and asked him to come to the station for questioning. At the time, his license was suspended, so his parents had to drop him off. Over the years of Bo and Ryan being estranged, Ryan was able to hold a steady job, but fell further into alcohol and drug addiction. Surprisingly, it seemed like he was almost ready and eager to talk to the investigators and get everything off his chest that he had been hiding for all those years. Before his confession, he mentioned that he was on opioid pain medication, but was adamant about not wanting an attorney. Ryan's version of events were similar to Bo's, but had some differences as well. He explained that on Saturday, October 22nd, 2005, he and Bo and some other friends had been drinking and partying. At some point after Bo passed out, he took Bo's truck keys out of his pants and left their trailer. He drove around looking for a place to rob, which is something he'd normally do to get small amounts of cash to buy drugs. He said he used a credit card to break the lock on Tara's door and then began going through her purse. He didn't think she was home, but Tara surprised him as he was rummaging through her things. In a panic, Ryan said he struck Tara, causing her to fall to the ground. He then left and called Tara's house from the payphone to see if she'd woken up. When she didn't answer, he went back and realized she was dead. He said he then wrapped Tara's body in a blanket and loaded her into Bo's truck. He took her to the pecan orchard and then recruited Bo's help in burning the body. He even talked about using latex gloves, which, if you remember, I mentioned had been referred to in the media as a blue glove. However, Ryan somehow knew the actual color, which the investigators believed showed proof of guilty knowledge, as well as the payphone call that hadn't been released to the public.
Turn the lock, it was off, but as Linda said, you can pop it real easy with a card. I learned that when I locked myself out several times. So I've been in my house, so I see a purse, and next thing I know, she said something, cracked me on the shoulder, and I hear, and I said, I think I did. Getting the daylight insurance early in the morning.
So you said you went to, what kind of phone did you use?
This is a payphone.
Do you know which store it was?
The TG now was, I think, I can't remember what it was at the time.
How did you call the house? What did you do?
I dialed for them, to get the numbers, and I didn't know. And there wasn't an answer.
You were hoping that she would answer the phone, and when she did, you knew something was on.
Yes, sir.
On February 23, 2017, the GBI announced that they had arrested Ryan Duke for the murder of Tara Grinstead, along with burglary and concealing a body. It's clear that after Bo helped the GBI locate Ryan, he figured he'd get immunity for his role in concealing Tara's death if he agreed to testify. In a text exchange with a friend, Bo said, "Brooke let it slip through her mom. She tipped off the GBI." Through a long negotiation between Brooke, the case agent, myself, my lawyer, and the DAs, we worked out a deal. It worked out well, for me at least. Brooke may get the reward. His friend replied, "So will you get arrested and then they let you go after the trial?" And Bo said, "No, I won't be arrested or prosecuted at all." The friend replied again, "Dude, who else knows about this besides you?" And in a chilling reply, Bo wrote, "Emily, 2 guys from Asilla, Brooke, my cousin, and possibly others I don't remember telling. Please, never bring me a dead body, although now I've had some practice." That actually turned out to be true, and it came out during the course of Ryan's defense preparing for trial that Bo had in fact told several people, including some guys at a party in the days after the murder. Bo was always kind of seen as a boisterous liar, especially when he's drunk. Some people did end up telling police what Bo said at the party back in 2005, and they even went with police out to the pecan orchard where he claimed to have gotten rid of the body with Ryan. However, nothing was found at the time, and it was just another lead that slipped through the cracks. Even though Bo was right about not being charged with murder, he was ultimately charged with concealing a death, hindering apprehension or punishment of a criminal, and tampering with evidence in connection with Tara Grinstead's murder. He was arrested on March 3, 2017, but shortly after released on a $16,700 bond. Even though Ryan had confessed to Tara's murder, a couple named Ashley and John Merchant became interested in the case and in Ryan's confession after it was released to the public. Ashley and John are a husband and wife defense attorney team who own the Merchant law firm and decided to meet with Ryan to discuss the details of the case. Based on what he told them, they picked his case and offered to represent him pro bono. Why, you might ask? Well, according to Ryan, he had actually lied in his confession and didn't really murder Tara. According to him, he had been scared of Bo all these years, but now he was in jail. Even though he'd actually been released on bail, he felt safe to tell the real story. The Merchants knew that defending Ryan would be an uphill battle, especially given the false confession, but they have a tendency to pick up tough cases and are actually pretty successful with them. Ryan would ultimately decide to plead not guilty, and the Merchants were going to try to prove that it was actually Bo who carried out the murder and Ryan who's pressured into helping cover it up. While each of the men were awaiting trial, more of Bo's true colors started to show while he was out on bail. On New Year's Eve in 2019, 2 women in towels ran to a neighbor of Bo's. They claimed that he forced them to his house at gunpoint, sexually assaulted them, and then threatened to commit suicide after taking cocaine and drinking alcohol. When he was distracted, they escaped out of a window into the neighbor's house, and Bo then fled the area. After the women were taken to the hospital, a massive manhunt ensued with Bo being caught and arrested days later on January 5th. He was charged with 1 count of rape, 2 counts of aggravated sodomy, 2 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of aggravated assault, 4 counts of possession of a knife and firearm in commission of a crime, and 1 count of possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Thankfully for these, he was held without bond and would await the trial for his involvement in Tara's death, and now these new charges as well in custody. Due to the Merchants representing Ryan pro bono, there was a lot of continuances and litigation regarding whether or not the state should be required to pay for expert witnesses for the defense if the defendant is not being represented by a public defender. They were seeking funding to have an expert in touch DNA to analyze the findings on the glove found at Tara's, and an expert in false confessions given under the influence of drugs and duress. This pushed back Ryan's trial date, meaning that Bo Dukes would go to trial on his charges first. Bo's trial for concealing Tara's death and then essentially lying to the GBI about it began on March 18th, 2019. The jury heard testimony from Brooke, Bo's army friend John, the friends he told at the party back in 2005, and various GBI investigators who questioned him.
I had mentioned something about seeing a billboard and it had a really, really pretty lady that was on it. And I was like, man, that's crazy, you know, what's going on with that, you know? And that was, like I said, the previous conversation we had. But he had brought it up and said, you remember that billboard that you had seen? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I know what happened. And then I was like kind of shocked with that and was like, what? Technically killed Tara to him.
The friend had said that.
Yes, that he had beat her and accidentally strangled her and killed her, and he didn't know what to do. So he needed his truck to be able to move her body.
A forensic analyst also discussed the DNA findings on the glove located at the scene, which were determined to be a match for Ryan, with no touch DNA from Bo on that or anywhere else at Tara's home. However, I don't think there was any denying that Bo had lied to the GBI about concealing Tara's death and potentially more. The jury ultimately agreed and found Bo guilty on all charges. At sentencing, he made a statement basically asking for forgiveness from Tara's family, and his defense team asked for leniency.
I'm thankful for this opportunity to address the court. To the Tara Grinstead family, I'm truly sorry. Your long suffering has been unimaginable. My actions were cowardly, callous, and cruel. I was more interested in self-pity and self-preservation than doing the right thing for Tara and for you. I pray for your forgiveness.
Unfortunately for him, neither Tara's family nor the judge were deterred by his apologies nearly 14 years after the fact, and her stepmom, Connie, has this to say.
We know he wasn't charged with Tara's murder, but for over 11 years, he watched all of us who loved her suffer unimaginable pain and heartache as we frantically searched for her and prayed that by some miracle we might find her alive. He watched innocent people's lives turned upside down because they were falsely accused. He watched whole communities in turmoil because Tara was missing Osceola, where she lived and worked, her hometown of Hawkinsville, and even areas beyond. What he didn't see was the fear in the eyes of the young children in our family who were afraid to even go outside and play because they thought if somebody took Tara, they might take me too. What he didn't see was my elderly mother who lived in an assisted living home and who would sit every day with her face in her hands, worried and upset because we couldn't find Tara. When the workers would ask her what was wrong, she would say, "I'm just so worried about Tara." My mother had a stroke and died 28 days after Tara disappeared. The workers in that home told me they fully believed the stress of Tara's disappearance brought on that stroke that ended her life in a matter of hours. I wasn't even able to be with my mother during the last days of her life to comfort her because we were out looking for Tara, doing everything we knew to do to find her. So I have to live with that sadness every day too, that I could not be there for her at a time when she needed me the most. What he didn't see was the days and nights that we were so overcome with grief we could barely function. The sadness that I still see in her daddy's eyes over losing his little girl breaks my heart. And while all of those situations I just described were taking place, he did nothing. He just went on living his life, not caring about the pain he had caused others. He knew she was never coming back. He could have at least told us that, but he didn't.
The judge also got visibly choked up while talking about Tara, and he handed down the maximum sentence, 25 years. Later that year, prosecutors agreed to let Bo plead guilty to aggravated assault with intent to rape for the 2019 incident, as well as for the sexual assault back in 2017 in Warner Robins. He also had to plead guilty to possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, while more than a dozen of the other charges were dismissed. He received 10 years for the reduced rape counts, plus 5 years for illegally possessing a gun. However, the judge shockingly decided to have the sentence run concurrently with the sentence for Tara's death rather than consecutively. Basically, he'll serve no extra time for these crimes. Finally, on March 15, 2021, after several appeals, the Georgia Supreme Court ruled in Ryan's favor of receiving access to state funds for expert witnesses. This meant that the trial could move forward after so many delays, and ultimately begin on May 9, 2022, and the state's opinion with Ryan's confession, his DNA on the glove, and guilty knowledge of the color and the payphone call, their case was a slam dunk. However, the state may have underestimated the determination of the merchants and how crucial the expert witnesses they fought so hard for would be in the trial. The confession was played in court, but the defense called a witness specializing in false confessions who stated that it was uncommon for someone like Ryan, who was on drugs, suffered from depression, was feeling pressured and afraid of Bo Dukes to confess to something he didn't do.
Based on a statement that Ryan made to a GBI agent. The evidence is going to show that Ryan admitted that he had taken a narcotic, pain medicine, prior to that statement. The evidence is going to show that he was under the effects of this pain medicine. You'll see it. The state showed you a photo. You'll see it.
They also believe that the guilty knowledge about the glove and the phone call were actually provided to Ryan by the detectives during his confession, during leading questions, and repeating the same facts over and over again. Even though the glove had small amounts of Ryan's DNA, the defense called Tara's friend Heath Dykes to the stand, who went by her house late Sunday night to check on her. Heath, being a police officer, stated that he did not see the glove there in the yard, which means Bo could have technically planted it there after getting help from Ryan to conceal the body.
Okay, so your testimony is that you walked over that area twice.
Yes.
And you can't say one way or the other whether you would have noticed it.
Okay, I did not see the glove.
In a surprise twist, Ryan took the stand to testify in his own defense and to lay out his real version of events. He stated that after partying with friends, he passed out drunk and sick in the bathroom of his trailer. A family member also testified to seeing Ryan passed out cold in the bathroom, which would have made it impossible for him to go anywhere at the time. He woke up the next morning to Bo telling him that he had killed Tara, threw away her keys in a laundromat dumpster, and then took her to the pecan orchard. Ryan said he felt bad when he found that Bo had Tara's wallet and didn't want to believe that he had actually killed her. He thought about returning the wallet and decided to call Tara's number to see if she picked up, but of course she didn't.
Did you murder Tara Grinstead?
I did not.
Did you break into her home on October 22nd, 23rd, 2005?
No, sir, I did not.
Have you ever been inside her home at any point in your life?
No, sir, I haven't.
Did you ever strike Miss Grinstead?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you ever choke Miss Grinstead?
No, sir, I've never choked anyone.
Did you ever take a pair of gloves or a glove to Miss Grinstead's home?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you see Miss Grinstead's body after she died?
I did.
Where did you see it?
In the pecan orchard.
Did somebody take you to the body?
They did.
Who took you to the body?
Bo Dukes.
Did Bo Dukes tell you that he killed Tara Grinstead?
He did.
Do you know how Miss Grinstead died?
I do not.
Were you asked to help dispose of her body?
I was.
Who asked you to do that?
Bo Dukes.
The defense also argued that if Ryan had gone to Tara's to rob her, why would he have left $100 in her car and not taken anything of value from the home, such as jewelry which was readily sitting out on her dresser? If he had actually struck and killed her, going back to the scene to collect and dispose of her body wouldn't have made any sense, when at that point there was no evidence to show that he had been the one to do it. They believed it was more likely that Bo assaulted Tara and had left DNA on her body, which is why he felt he had no choice but to dispose of her completely. The fact that Bo was a convicted rapist didn't really make him look better in that aspect either. Ultimately, the jury agreed and acquitted Ryan on all charges besides concealing a death.
We, the jury, find the defendant count 1, malice murder, not guilty. Count 2, felony murder, not guilty. Count 3, felony murder, not guilty. Count 4, aggravated assault, not guilty. Count 5, burglary, not guilty. Count 6, concealing death of another, guilty. It is signed this day, May 20th, 2022, and signed by the foreperson.
Even though he was found not guilty of Tara's murder, that didn't lessen the blow for her family and friends, who had understandably harsh words for Ryan at the sentencing.
I would like to ask Ryan why he did not come forward at that time and confess. Bo was in prison, so this excuse of fear just does not cut it. Had Ryan come forward even in 2013, that would have been 4 less years of torment that Tara's sister family had to endure. Ryan did not even come forward in 2017. He was caught. He confessed because he got caught. There is nothing sanctimonious about that. I was in a Zoom meeting and heard one of Ryan's counsel, who also requested that teacher and beauty queen be omitted. They had no problem calling witnesses to the stand to talk about what a good guy Ryan was. Well, Your Honor, I would like to tell the court who Tara Grinstead was. Tara was a faithful and devoted friend to all who knew her. That's who Tara Grinstead was. Your Honor, I could go on and on and on with stories of this nature from dozens of people, but I will stop at this point because hopefully I have touched briefly on the character of my sister that was not allowed during testimony. I cannot even begin to speculate concerning the dollar amount spent by the city of Osceola and the county of Irwin during the first few years after Tara vanished. Within just the first few weeks, there were helicopters in the air. K-9 units from all over the southeastern United States were here in Osceola, on the ground, searching. Giant billboards were erected in Osceola, Fitzgerald, and on I-75 in Tifton. A command center was set up at the Irwin County Senior Center. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of volunteers, including law enforcement, first responders, civil defense, teachers, friends, family, trekked through revolting terrain looking for Tara, while Ryan Duke smugly sat in his home in Fitzgerald, knowing these extensive and costly searches would be in vain. Ryan Duke has been in jail for 5 years at the Irwin County Detention Center. Personally, I have lived in a prison of hell for almost 17 years. To be more specific, 6,053 days. 6,053 days, Ryan Duke. The maximum he can serve on the charge of concealing a death is 10 years. That's only 7 years less than the sentence that I and the rest of Tara's family and friends have experienced due to his revolting and villainous action. Ryan may have acquitted on several charges, but does that make him innocent? Absolutely not. Not by any stretch of the imagination.
The judge handed down the maximum penalty for concealing a death, which was 10 years in prison. Ryan had already served half of that while awaiting trial, meaning he will only spend 5 more years behind bars. At the end of the day, neither Bo Dukes or Ryan Duke were found guilty of Tara Grinstead's murder, only concealing her death. That leaves many people wondering, was there actual justice in this case? It's a miscarriage of justice in itself that her family had to endure a single moment of agony not knowing what happened to Tara, let alone 12 years for Bo to come forward. Even though I'm sure it was difficult, if the GBI had taken all of the tips about Bo and Ryan's involvement seriously to begin with, her family could have gotten answers much sooner. As Tara's sister Anita mentioned, it's pretty hard to believe that Ryan was scared to turn Bo in when he hasn't even spoken to him in years, and Bo had spent time in prison for the Army scheme back in 2013. If he had come forward then, that would have taken off at least 4 years of mental torment the family had been dealing with, but he didn't do that. Bo was also Ryan's best friend. They lived together. How truly terrified of him could Ryan have been? Many people believe that we'll never know the full truth of what happened to Tara, and that perhaps both men had more involvement together than they're saying. Another thing people bring up is that the choice to defend Ryan Duke pro bono has caused them to lose respect for the Merchants. Ashley Merchant is often referred to as the ultimate champion of constitutional rights. She's done great work and is a highly respected criminal defense attorney, most recently garnering favor for uncovering corruption in Fulton County's district attorney's office regarding the YSL case against Young Thug. She was also known to be the person who outed the DA Fannie Willis for having an affair with her colleague Nathan Wade and trying to get Fannie thrown off the election interference case against former President Donald Trump. In addition to social issues like this, if you follow Georgia's true crime, you may have seen the Merchants defending people like Jennifer Rosenbaum and Justin Ross Harris in the Court of Appeals. Even though there is a need and a right for defendants to have a good defense team, people often wonder why the Merchants choose to represent these controversial figures. Tara Grinstead said during her statement that after Ryan was acquitted from the murder charge, the Merchants seemed to celebrate during their press conference, which felt like a slap in the face to the family.
We believed in Ryan. Stephen actually called me, and we, my husband John and I, we have our own family practice. It's a small family law firm, and we always have felt very strongly about doing pro bono work. We've always done pro bono work, and we think that it's something that lawyers should do. And so we always had one case, and it was just the timing was great because I had just resolved a case that I had, a pro bono case, and so I knew about the case. I had done some interviews on the podcast and we knew about it, and met with Stephen, met with their family, and just fell in love with them, fell in love with the community, and wanted to come down and help. We really think that the community can start to heal now. They have heard from Ryan what happened. They know that the person who actually committed this crime is in prison. While he may not be in prison for committing the crime that he committed, he still is in prison. And I think that gives them some amount of closure. Justice is never perfect, so while he may not be paying the price for the crime that he committed, he is definitely being punished. And so that hopefully will give the community some amount of closure.
Even if Ryan didn't commit the murder, he still chose to burn Tara's body, robbing her family of a proper burial and years of their lives. He chose to prolong that suffering, standing by as law enforcement and volunteers searched for months, knowing they'd never find Tara. There was no winning in this case. Getting someone who desecrated a beautiful person only 5 more years in prison isn't something to celebrate. Even if Ryan isn't a murderer, at the very least, he's a horrible human being. Throughout the entire case between 2005 until now, with all of the rumors, speculation, secrets, shady police work, lies, hearings, trials, and so on, it was easy for people to lose sight of what actually mattered: getting justice for Tara. Ryan isn't a victim, certainly neither is Bo. The real victims here are Tara and her loved ones. Even though both men will be spending time behind bars, given the fact that no one was convicted of her murder specifically, I'm not sure justice has fully been served. Please let me know your thoughts on this case in the comments. And until next time, stay safe.